The landscapes of our lives are for learning, where experience is our teacher. When we gather together to share our resources, we are destined to love and thrive. Good morning, Pierre.
Good morning, Maureen. I love these mornings. I get to be up really early here in Sonoma, and it's, well, you heard it all in the sigh. It's just so beautiful. And you are in a beautiful place too, right?
Yeah, I'm right outside of Boston, live on a pond. It's a beautiful day. I just heard in your perspective, like such positive, like I get up early and, and just, I hear things, and that's just such a healthy, like, statement and optimistic. And because there's, I don't know, maybe I'm surrounded by a lot of complaining, but like, oh, I have
You're
to
a therapist. Like, people
I know,
actually
yeah. So
pay real money to complain, Maureen. You're a therapist.
People have legitimate reasons for complaining, but
I'm
actually not talking about that.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
they don't.
No, I'm not actually even thinking about my, clients at all, because that's a whole other thing. But
Well,
just
I'm
people
always
in general.
kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not always kidding, but I like to have a little fun as I go along.
Yeah.
They're paying you to complain. No. Well, we did our first interview with Xerxes, and last night he leads a meditation, and I've been participating in his meditation by Zoom, which is pretty hilarious in the sense that I tell people I have to go meditate, and I'm doing that on Zoom. Oh yeah, I log on, then I close my eyes for 45 minutes. I'm like, well, why even be there? But his voice is so beautiful. He's such a beautiful guy. And at the end of every meditation, we spend some time in a gratitude practice, which he's been doing for 7 years. Well,
the gratitude has become you, because, and I didn't say part of you, it's become you, because that's literally what I just heard. And I just pointed out, because people think, what is the quality of my life? Like, how do I want to have a better, higher quality human experience? And literally it's that practical. It's that concrete,
Yeah.
And so when I hear it, I just appreciate it. I mean, I want to be nearer to that, I want to surround myself with that.
That's so sweet. I'm just basking in your words and appreciation, and it just lands so beautifully.
Well, you said about going to your Zoom meeting, like, why if I close my eyes and I'm by myself sitting there, why do I go? Because you want to be around that, even through that portal. Okay,
that's true.
Whatever. It's the community, and it is. You want to be influenced by him.
Yeah. No, who we associate with, and I'm just taking a moment here. I'm sorry. I'm just a little overwhelmed. I mean,
do you want me? Do you need a tissue?
I'm flustered. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. As you get yourself together and breathe, the pond is moving now. And I remember when we first started, I told you that it was like glass, and it's moving a little bit. And so let's talk about movement.
Okay.
There's something about the water. I live right on it, and I see it, and it's movement. When I look at it, I mean, even when it's glass, it's still moving. This flies, and you can see things. But everything's flowing, everything's moving.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to come back to something you said about some certain amount of concreteness, and we'll get to movement in a second. Actually, the two are related, and it's funny how in this learning conversation podcast, so many things can be related, bacon and eggs and death and all these different things that we did in another podcast.
When you
But,
let things unfold, yes.
right. But part of this is sharing our experiences and guiding people in this mind-body somatic system that's more complex than just looking at your mind and whatnot. And one of the things that's been helpful, and it's happened through the gratitude practice and Xerxes now for over a year, is if I'm thinking about something a little bit too much, which has been basically me my whole life, I will focus on my ass. And I say that because I'm sitting down. I will focus on the one piece of me that's touching something. So this is where the movement comes in. Okay, we're not moving around, but it's a grounding. And instead of trying to breathe or do so many other little practices, this grounding to me in this place, what I'm feeling, becomes what I'm feeling, not what I'm thinking. And I start to take in the reality, the concreteness of where I am, who I am, and what I'm feeling. And that is so much different than what I'm thinking, worrying or projecting or doing what the things that the mind does. And I have found it, shout out to many people. I've found it to be very helpful, to just go to the concrete, go to ground. You can do the breathing and the meditating, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it's fabulous for you. And I'm glad that you're having that experience of yourself as an experiencer. Like really sensory, we're experiencers. Experiencing is happening all the time. And whether those experiences are thoughts, emotions, or sensations, like it's going on all the time.
It is.
And it's all right. It's all movement. It's all energy. So what I just heard you talk about, I was an overthinker, analyzer, whatever. Okay. You were
Right.
more focused on the thoughts,
Right.
To the detriment or not paying so much attention to the feelings or emotions. I think in our culture, that's where our culture and our society and the way things are going
Totally agree.
has been promoting that for a long time.
Totally agree.
And then, we've become a little disembodied, and we've talked about this on other podcasts, the one with Grace, especially. And so you're becoming more embodied and aware of yourself as a sensory body in those experiences. So paying more attention, you're paying more attention to you're feeling your feelings. You're feeling.
Yeah. You're a teacher as I am, and how when you teach, you'll go down one avenue of explanation, and it works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
And I think the piece that I was trying to bring out is this grounding to touch is a powerful thing for me, and more so than stopping to breathe or stopping to meditate or stopping to pray, all of things I did. So, sharing that. There's that guy. Go ahead. I was just going to bring up the guy, Ido Portal. He was on the Huberman podcast, and we were both, tuned into that. He's an Israeli guy who has a whole, theory about movement, theory and practice around movement. And it's a little bit of the same, words and thinking kind of divide things, and music. Well, there you go. Movement flows. And we were talking about the lake and flow. And this guy is all about life as flow. It's amazing.
Mm. Yeah, no, I was just gonna, before you, and I will comment on him in that idea. The word touch, we should maybe do this as a learning practice and talk about touch, but that's another thing that is sort of become less allowed, and it's so healing. I can
Oh,
tell you how, so I went to the Zen Center a couple of weeks ago and did a little walking meditation and what have you. And anyway, part of it is that the Zen priest will come around and she tells you, I'm gonna put my hands on you, and she's very gentle, her whole voice, like, people are safe, and you can say you don't want to, and she gives you that opportunity.
of course.
But there's something about, and there's something about the touch of another person, and she put her hands on my mid back, which is probably where I am. That's where I'm the tightest in my spine. And it's like, that's right where her hands went. And it's just an amazing experience, and so healing. And they are in psychotherapy, and especially in these trauma treatment programs that are more somatically based, bringing back this idea of touch. And I'll tell you, Feldenkrais was one of the men that Ido Portal mentioned. I don't know if you remember that, but he
Yes,
talked
I
about
do.
the Feldenkrais method. And I follow a woman called Irene Lyon, who is up in Canada, British Columbia, who came from the world of exercise science and so forth, and then got into trauma and healing and so forth. And I use a lot of her content and so forth, but she was trained in Feldenkrais and also the somatic experiencing by Peter Levine. And there's so much power in physical touch. So anyways, when you said touch, it kind of just, I don't know.
That's beautiful. Well, this is our podcast. The show notes are going to be filled up with these resources, and people can work out from within and have some of these selections as guides, but you were going to talk about movement and flow or something.
Yeah, well, you said earlier, and I kind of took a little note here on my notebook, about how learning happens in the flow of dialogue. And when we come together, we're trying to not be so prescriptive and prescribed. And you and I aren't talking beforehand of like, oh, I did all this research and, we're going to say this. It's not scripted. And
Right.
we're really trying to jump in, not let our self-consciousness get in the way or create a barrier to exposing ourselves to talk about either a word or a topic. And you mentioned something about, the connections that can happen within conversation, how we go from one topic to another, and then we learn something about this weird combination of concepts or something that we didn't expect to talk about. It's how the conversation flows. And I'm saying, like, stepping back and having an appreciation for that, of like the problem is with the expectations, right? It's like, without any expectations, like in meditation, it's sitting, it's not, so deliberate that you're focused on this outcome happening. And I want to learn this as a meditate. It's the same with conversation. Let's see what unfolds. And we will inevitably learn something from it, and allowing the movement of dialogue, to flow between us.
Thank you.
And not be so self-conscious about trying to control it and make sure it presents well. And it's nice that it's messy and we bang around and
thank you. You're very
that's the play,
courageous around
play.
Being vulnerable and exploring and recognizing it as part of the learning process, maybe even the the key part of the
But isn't
learning
that what
process.
Ido Portal was talking about?
Right,
The don't, it's not unscripted, like
right.
jazz. And he was trying to get Andrew Huberman, admittedly, a little bit,
Andrew
a little
Huberman is
stiff
very,
structure.
very, very
Science.
tightly wound. I'll just tell you that right
He's a
now. And
scientist
and
too. Just
Fortel, the classic line in this interview is Huberman asks him a question, and Portel says, I'm going to try, I can't do his accent. I'm going to try very hard today to not answer any of your questions.
yeah.
And I thought that was worth the price of admission to listen to this podcast, as this gentleman responds to not answer any question and leave enough room. And I'm going to come back to that, which is it's his movement practice is all about getting away from words, getting away from this overbearance on mental activity and thinking, and leaving that space that you were talking about, Maureen, for life and exploration and curiosity. And I think the beautiful thing about movement for me, as I reflect on that podcast, is that when I move, the stress of sitting and just being is relieved, because I'm moving and things are happening and whatnot. So I can be in that for a long period of time. And it's so interesting to me that yoga practice, we've talked about this before, the asanas, they're just a little piece of the puzzle that's going to prepare you to be able to sit there and take it. Take what? Oh, yourself, silence for a long period of time. That's what they're for, to sit there and take it. It's very hard to do.
Sit there and take it, meaning to tolerate. So I distress, stress
Experience. I don't know if you've ever practiced, well, you have. I shouldn't say it that way. But
tolerate your own
sitting,
experiences.
right, sitting for a long period of time. I invited a young person to the meditation on Tuesday night, a couple of weeks past, and the response was, "Oh, I've never meditated for that long. That was difficult." And I remember certain meditations where, it does get difficult. There's a physical aspect of it, but there's also a mental aspect. Your mind just goes into a tunnel, and it's very hard to allow that. The mind wants to leap out of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think that's where the curiosity comes in. It's just, you're the observer and you're just curiously and you don't have an agenda. And it's that non-judgmental awareness that, you're not critiquing, it's just observation. It's noticing, right? And it's all okay. And that's what the Zen priest is always saying. It's like, it's all okay. It's all okay. Like it all just, you're not there to really do anything with it. It's just you're experiencing your experiences, which includes your mind thinking
Sure.
about your sensations and all of it. And it's all okay. It's not doing it any right way.
Yeah, I forget how Michael, we're going to have so many people in show notes. I forget how Michael Singer puts it. Sitting in the seat of consciousness and observing, that's a difficult.
It's a practice.
It's a practice, right? It's a practice. I shouldn't.
Not to get better at it, not to practice to get better, but it's all just a practice. You just try it, you practice it.
Right.
Without it.
What was I reading about practices? Was that something you gave me, or something that just the whole idea of practice?
I don't know if Ido Portal was talking about it.
No, it wasn't Ido Portal. It was, well, I'll have to look and come back to that. It might have been an old.
But I think that's another word that we could do a word, talk about is practice, because I think in our culture, practice makes perfect, and is always focused on the outcome, where practice as process is just That's what Ido Portal, like, it's just movement. That's all.
I
It's
think it was an
movement. That's
article.
all.
I think it was an article in the journal, and I'll have to look it up. It was just yesterday. It started off with practice makes perfect, and practice perfect perfect practice makes perfection, or something like that. And then it kind of went on to deconstruct. No, practice is just practice. I'll have to find it. I think it was related to sports that I was reading, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you drill down into words like that, and these concepts of meditation or movement or practice, like the gradient or levels of meaning matter. And it really, this is where I become, I guess, my word person again, is like, it matters how specific you are when you're trying to define these things, because we're talking about ways of being in the
Why
world.
does it,
And,
why
and
does it matter? Why does it matter?
because we don't want confusion and misunderstanding. We want to know that we're talking about and connecting about the same
Is
thing.
there a place of non-confusion and understanding?
No, but I don't, no, I think it's just that it's the spectrum, it's the continuum of specificity in order to complete chaos. And we're always trying to.
Well, I'll kind of come in here and hold up a mirror. I think the focus on the words is not it's not a bad thing, but I think it comes from being a teacher and wanting to communicate, so that there isn't misunderstanding. Because if you go to the Zen approach of the Zen priest, it's all okay, and Ido.
But how do we understand each other?
Well,
Humans who have this brain that uses language, like, yeah, there's other ways to connect through our bodies and so forth.
how do we understand our dog? I think that, you've got a guy like Sadhguru, and you've got some other people, and they sit there and he specifically tells you in the podcast that, I'm going to talk words, but the words they're going to be, I don't want to, because they can't explain. And you can
limit.
absorb humanity, possibly, I'm just theorizing, without words. How do we know not to like hack flowers off, just experience things.
Well, words are just, they're limiting, and they're a representation. They're symbols. They represent reality. So if we want to know if we're trying to live in this same shared reality, because it is always shared, because we're not just autonomous individuals, like, well,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? Like, we're not alone, like, we're shared, we're social animals, organisms. If we want to, God, we could go into physics here and like friggin', entropy and
what I was going to say is,
like, no, let me finish. The limits of language, you brought it up.
Yep.
Yes, it's limited. And I know where you're coming from. It's like, oh, it separates and cuts up the world and all of that. That's true. But the reality is, here we are as social beings trying to survive and not absolutely destroy each other. I mean, we could do that, but we don't. Mostly, we're still here, and we have have to negotiate. And I think the words and language is a really powerful way that we humans do that to ensure our own survival.
Totally.
So that's why it matters how we talk and understand words and define things, and we'll never get ultimate perfect meaning and no confusion, eliminating as much as possible.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it's like that thing that my dad used to say, just because, A is something doesn't mean that B it isn't, So, the words in our Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, or all people are created equal. Have ever, are there, that's up there in the top 10 set of words that have ever been, put together. The golden rule, treat yourself, treat others as you would have them treat you,
Yeah.
which I just learned the other day. I knew this, that the Jewish formulation of that preceded the golden rule, but it was in the negative. It was don't do to others as you would have them do to you. But I did not know when it happened. I thought it was just part of the Jewish tradition. It actually happened around the time of Christ with Hillel, this great rabbi.
Yeah, I actually heard Jordan Peterson say exactly that.
Oh my gosh.
That it was.
I had to read a book about it.
Negative. Yeah, it was that.
Yeah.
Way.
So, and it's interesting too, that in yoga, the first branch of the tree. Do you hear the plane?
Yeah. Why are we talking about the golden rule all of a sudden? Like, how did we get
words.
there?
The most, I was just confirming like what the other side of this, which is, words are super important. They are super important because they give guidance.
Words to live by.
Yeah, words to live by. Words to live by. Maybe that's a good place to wind up this podcast, but I just want to say that plane going overhead, there's a woman in her 80s, I believe, that flies a biplane around here. And she just kind of dances over the sky on a beautiful day like this. And I've never seen her. I've seen the plane, but I've heard her talked about as an amazing pilot and probably an amazing person. So maybe that's a good place to wind up. Somebody just soaring through the blue sky this morning.
Sounds good. Movement. She's flying along.
She is.
And how are we able to make that plane through negotiation, language, and building things and evolution? And
it's our unique.
Man, these podcasts, it's like crazy.
Yeah, maybe not unique, but it's a special gift that we have, and I appreciate, how you focus on it, how we focus on it. That's what we're doing here. We're talking. People can't see us, they can't feel us. It's all through words. So
yeah, playing with ideas, playing with, language. Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, how about you start us out?
This is Maureen from Landscapes for Learning. Learn to live and live to learn.
Thank you. And this is Pierre from Yoga Heals. As I always say, peace through grace. Peace through grace, Maureen.